No one in Maple Brook Estates had ever seen a luxury SUV sink into a front yard, and no one expected the HOA president to be standing beside it when it happened. On a calm Saturday morning, Daniel Reeves stepped onto his porch with a cup of coffee, expecting nothing more than birdsong and sunshine. Instead, he froze. Parked squarely on his lawn was a gleaming black SUV, polished, oversized, and unmistakably out of place. Behind the wheel stood Cynthia Hargrove, the HOA president, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched like armor. She wasn't visiting. She was inspecting. Daniel had received 3 notices that week about grass height compliance. He had trimmed it the same day. Yet here she was, parked deep into his yard as if she owned it. Neighbors slowed their morning walks, sensing tension in the air. Cynthia tapped her pen against the clipboard and announced that he was in violation again. Daniel remained calm. He asked politely if she could move her vehicle off his property. She didn't. Instead, she quoted bylaws. What she didn't know, what no one in that quiet neighborhood knew, was that Daniel had spent the last month preparing for moments exactly like this, and in the soft earth beneath her tires, something was waiting. Daniel had moved into Maple Brook Estates seeking peace, not conflict, but the rules seemed to grow stricter with every passing week. First came warnings about mailbox paint shade. Then driveway edge cleanliness. Then the placement of his trash bin. Each notice arrived signed by Cynthia Hargrove, whose reputation for control was whispered about at block parties but never challenged openly. Daniel had tried compliance. He repainted. He trimmed. He adjusted. Still, citations arrived. What bothered him most was the double standard. Other lawns sat untouched, driveways cracked, fences leaning. Yet Cynthia's attention never wandered from his property line the morning she parked on his lawn. It felt less like enforcement and more like dominance. He stepped closer, careful with his tone. The soil beneath the tires looked darker than the rest of the grass. Please move your vehicle, he repeated. Cynthia sighed loudly, as if burdened by unreasonable people. She explained that HOA authority allowed inspections where necessary. A few neighbors lingered near the sidewalk, pretending to check their phones. Daniel glanced once more at the ground beneath the SUV. He had warned the landscaping company to leave that section untouched, because below the grass, hidden beneath fresh soil and sod, lay an old drainage cavity from a long-abandoned irrigation line, soft ground. Unstable ground, and Cynthia's heavy SUV was resting directly above it. The first sound was subtle, a faint shift, like earth sighing under pressure. Cynthia paused mid-sentence, sensing something she could not yet see. Daniel heard it too. The front tire sank half an inch. Cynthia stepped back instinctively. "Did you do something to this yard?" she asked, suspicion rising in her voice. Daniel shook his head calmly. "It's always been soft there." Another shift, neighbors edged closer. Phones lifted quietly, the SUV tilted slightly forward, the immaculate chrome grille now angled toward the grass. Cynthia reached for her phone, perhaps to call towing services, perhaps to document what she already believed would be someone else's fault. Daniel felt no satisfaction, only a strange stillness. He had asked her not to park there. Twice, the ground compressed further, unable to support the weight pressing into it. A muffled crunch echoed beneath the soil, gasps rippled through the small crowd forming along the curb. The front half of the luxury SUV dipped deeper into the lawn, the tire disappearing into the softened earth as if the ground itself were reclaiming its space. Cynthia stared, stunned, clipboard forgotten at her side, and Daniel realized this moment would change more than just a patch of grass. Because the HOA president had just discovered something she could not control. Within minutes, the quiet street transformed into a scene of stunned disbelief. The SUV's front end rested awkwardly in the collapsed soil, its pristine finish now streaked with mud. Cynthia's composure began to fracture. She circled the vehicle, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp but trembling beneath its authority. Words like liability and property damage floated through the warm morning air. Daniel stood near his porch steps, hands folded, calm but watchful. He had not raised his voice. He had not argued. He had simply asked her not to park there. Neighbors murmured quietly. Some exchanged knowing looks. Others recorded discreetly. A landscaping contractor from 2 houses down approached, examining the ground. He explained that older irrigation voids could collapse under heavy weight, especially after recent rainfall. Cynthia's eyes snapped toward Daniel. "You should have warned me," she said. Daniel's voice remained steady. "I asked you to move." Silence followed. For the first time, the authority Cynthia carried like armor seemed fragile, dented not by confrontation but by consequence. The tow truck was called. The HOA board members began arriving. And the quiet morning transformed into something Maplebrook Estates had never witnessed before. By midday, the street resembled an impromptu town meeting. Board members stood in tight clusters, reviewing bylaws as if searching for rescue between the lines. The tow operator inspected the SUV carefully, explaining the extraction process would require caution to avoid further sinking. Each minute felt heavy, stretched by the weight of unspoken tension. Cynthia remained near the sidewalk, her confidence replaced by tight restraint. Her voice softened when she spoke now, stripped of the sharp edge neighbors had grown accustomed to. Daniel answered questions simply and without accusation. He explained the drainage cavity and his request that morning. Several neighbors confirmed hearing him ask her to move. One board member quietly admitted that HOA authority did not permit parking on private lawns without permission. The words lingered. Cynthia looked at the indentation in the grass, then at the faces surrounding her, not hostile, but observant. For years, rules had flowed in one direction. Today, accountability flowed back. When the SUV was finally lifted free, the damaged lawn remained a shallow scar in the earth, but something deeper had shifted. Power, once unquestioned, now stood examined under the bright afternoon sun, and Maplebrook Estates was beginning to understand that respect could not be enforced, it had to be mutual. The following week, envelopes arrived at every home in Maplebrook Estates. Inside was a notice announcing an emergency HOA meeting. Attendance was higher than anyone could remember. Folding chairs filled the clubhouse, voices hushed with anticipation. Cynthia stood at the front, no clipboard, no sunglasses, no rehearsed authority. She looked smaller somehow, more human. She acknowledged the incident. She admitted parking on private property had been inappropriate. She proposed revisions ensuring inspections would respect homeowner boundaries. The room remained quiet, not tense, but attentive. Daniel sat in the third row, listening, not triumphant but reflective. He had never sought conflict. He had wanted fairness. A neighbor raised her hand and spoke gently about communication. Another mentioned mutual respect. The conversation shifted from enforcement to community. For the first time, the HOA meeting felt less like governance and more like neighbors shaping the place they shared. Outside, the repaired patch of lawn blended back into green, almost invisible unless someone knew where to look, but the memory remained. Because sometimes, change doesn't arrive through arguments, sometimes, it arrives when the ground beneath certainty gives way. Autumn settled over Maplebrook Estates with quiet grace. Leaves drifted across sidewalks where neighbors now paused to talk instead of merely passing by. Daniel's lawn grew thick and even, the repaired earth stronger than before. Cynthia walked the neighborhood without a clipboard, stopping to greet residents by name. The SUV incident became a story told softly, less about embarrassment and more about perspective. It marked the moment when authority transformed into accountability, and rules began sharing space with understanding. Daniel never mentioned that morning again. He didn't need to. The respect he had sought now lived in small gestures, a wave from across the street. A shared smile, the absence of unnecessary notices. One evening, Cynthia paused at the edge of his driveway. "Thank you for your patience," she said. Daniel nodded. "We're neighbors first." As the sun dipped below the rooftops, the neighborhood felt different, not perfect, but balanced. The ground had given way beneath a heavy vehicle, but something stronger had risen in its place: fairness, humility, and the quiet power of mutual respect. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.